Welcome to Design 103 CAD Fundamentals. In this drawing we're going to be completing extra credit number 4, which is drawing 9-5. It's a drawing of a gazebo. And in this I'm going to be showing you how to do mainly just the drawing of the gazebo, and I'll give you some tips on putting in the text and the dimensions, but most of that annotation as far as the dimensions and the text and the noting I'm going to leave up to you using the text and the dimension tools. The main thing I'm going to show in this is how to get the actual gazebo drawn. So if we jump over to AutoCAD, you're going to see that I already have it drawn here, and I'm just going to give you a couple tips before we start. Remember, we're doing an orthographic drawing here, so we need to have both our top view and our front view lined up left to right. So they should line up exactly so that we can project lines from the top down or from the bottom up. And if we look at the top view here, you're going to see that we have a lot of polygons, and if you remember, you can click the drop down for the rectangle and the polygon tool is inside there. So we're going to be making use of that quite a bit. And another tip is that when you create these 2x4s that go around the outside to create the roof framing, what you want to do is draw this top one here. So you'll draw that one, and then you want to draw one of these also that's at the longer length. And you'll take those two and make sure you have them trimmed appropriately before you do this. But you're going to create a polar array using the center of the gazebo roof as your center point for that polar array. So you'll select these two and array them around together, and that's going to keep you from having to do a lot of trimming. But you want to make sure that you get all the polygons in first before you put those 2x4s in. So we're going to have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 polygons in here. Some of them with the polygon command, others we'll get by offsetting. But you want to make sure you get all those polygons drawn first before you try and do that polar array. And another tip down here is that we have an opportunity for some mirroring, which you can see this side on the left and the other side on the right are going to be mirror images of each other. So again, don't draw everything twice. Try and mirror it if you can to save yourself time and effort. So starting out with, I'm going to do the top view first. And something you're going to want to do before you create this drawing is you need to change your units. Probably right now your template is set up to be in decimal units, but we're doing an architectural type drawing here. So you can see all of our units are listed in feet and inches. So we need to change our units from decimal over to architectural. And to do that, remember, you can type in units on the keyboard and hit enter. And I've already got mine changed because I've completed this drawing once, but when I started, mine was set on decimal. So I clicked the drop down list and change to architectural, and you can choose whatever precision you want here. For what we're drawing, we can probably get by with a 1/2 inch of precision, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. And once you get that set up, you can hit OK. And again, we're going to stay in inches, but we are changing the type to architectural, so I'll hit OK. And now that I've got that set up, there's a couple things we need to talk about. When you are doing an architectural drawing, for instance, if I'm drawing a line, anything that I type in, AutoCAD is going to take as inches. So if I type in 6, AutoCAD is going to assume that that's 6 inches. But if you want to draw something using a feet and inches input, you can click, and you're going to have to use apostrophes or quotation marks on your keyboard to mimic what you see here, for instance, with 5'6". So you're going to type it in just like that to tell AutoCAD whether you want feet or inches. So if I want to make a line that's 5 feet 6 inches long, I'm going to type in 5 feet 6 inches and hit enter, and that's how AutoCAD's going to know you mean feet or inches. I can also do just feet, so for instance, if I want a line that's 8 feet long, I can type 8, put an apostrophe, and then hit enter, and it'll give me an 8-foot long line. But that's how you input your dimensions in an architectural style drawing. So starting out, I'm going to do this big outside octagon, which if we look at our drawing, they give us different radiuses here depending on which polygon we're drawing. So this big outside one, if we look, they give the dimension right here as a radius of 6'4". And what they're telling us is if we circumscribe a circle, that this polygon is going to have a radius that coincides with that circumscribed circle of 6'4". So when I go back to AutoCAD, and I'm going to go ahead and start a polygon command, and it's going to ask me for the number of sides. I'm going to put in 8 because we're going to draw an octagon, and then it's going to ask me for the center, so I'm going to choose the center point right here, and I have an option to inscribe or circumscribe. And if you read in the book, all of these polygons are going to be circumscribed about a circle, except for the smallest set in here, these two small ones. So until we get to those, we're going to continue picking circumscribed. So I'll pick circumscribed, and I have to put in my radius now, which in this case should be 6 feet 4 inches. Now notice how I've typed that in. I've used the architectural style when I'm typing in these dimensions. So I'll hit enter. And this is basically the concrete pad that this gazebo is going to sit on. So you can see what we're looking at actually with this first polygon is the edge right here of the concrete slab. Now something else I've noticed in creating this drawing is that whoever laid this out for the textbook manufacturer actually failed to realize that a 2x4 is not really 2 inches by 4 inches. A real 2x4 is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. But everything in this drawing they've made 2x4 as if a 2x4 was actually that size. So if you've not done a lot of construction work before, a real 2x4 is not 2 inches by 4 inches. It is 1.5 inches by 3.5 inches. And the reason for that is if you're framing up a wall, then you can put something on top of the 2x4, usually like drywall or backer board or something like that, and that way it ends up 4 inches after you attach something to the outside of the wall framing. So whoever did this failed to realize that, so everything that's in this drawing, when it's a 2x4, it's actually 2 inches by 4 inches, even though it wouldn't be that way in real life. If you were doing this in real life, these would all be 1.5 or 3.5 dimensions. So that's something to note. I've had people ask me that in the past, is this the real size of a 2x4, or should I draw it 2 inches by 4 inches? So for this lab, everything is going to be 2 inches by 4 inches. And what I'm talking about there is the thickness right here of these 2x4s. So the next thing I'm going to do is create this outside octagon of the framing of the roof. And if we look back at our drawing, that one has a radius of 6 feet even. So I'm going to make another polygon, and I'm going to make use of the O-track feature a lot in this drawing, so make sure you know how to use that O-track feature. So I'm going to hover over the top up here after I input 8 sides for my polygon. I'm going to hover over here at the top and O-track down, and then I'll O-track over here to the left, and I'm going to find that intersection point. That way I know I have the middle and that my two polygons will be concentric. So I'm going to click there, I'll choose circumscribed again, and I'm going to put in 6 feet even and hit enter. And now I can just take this and offset it 2 inches. So I'm going to use the offset command, type in 2 inches, and I'm going to offset that to the inside. And then I'll do it a couple more times down here to create these two polygons. So I'm going to use that polygon command and make 2 more octagons. And these two, if we look, the outside one is going to be 2 feet even. So I'm going to go ahead and create that one using the same technique. So I'll choose polygon, 8 sides. Oops. Then I'm going to O-track to find my center point. I'll click in the middle, circumscribed, and I want 2 feet, or I could also, if I wanted to, type in 24. 24 inches would be the same as 2 feet, so I can hit enter. And I'm just going to offset this 2 inches again to the inside. And I'll hit escape. And the next thing we need to do is create this last set of 2 polygons on the inside. And if you remember what I said a little bit ago, these two we're going to choose the inscribed option instead of the circumscribed. So I'm going to go ahead and do my last polygon, and the size for those is going to be 6 inches inscribed for the outer polygon. So I'm going to come down here, choose polygon. We're still going to stay with 8 sides. And I'm going to O-track to find that center point again. Click there. This time I'm going to choose inscribed. And my dimension is going to be 6 inches, so I'll type in 6, hit enter. And I'm going to go ahead and offset this 2 inches to the inside again. And one thing you'll notice is that we need to rotate this. We need to rotate it so that one of the points of the polygon is sticking straight up instead of one of the flats. So what I'm going to do is draw a line through the middle of this. that comes out to one of the points, because I'm going to need that in order to rotate it properly. So I'm going to select this, and I'm going to use the rotate command and choose the center point. And you'll notice that I can't really snap to straight up and down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rotate by reference command. So I'm going to type in REF, hit the space bar, and I'm going to click the start point and end point of this line I drew, and just move my cursor so it's straight up and down. And I'll click there, and that's the rotate by reference command. It's handy sometimes if you're having trouble rotating to do it that way. So I've got that in there now. And at this point I can start putting in these framing members, and I'm just going to draw two of them, remember. I'm going to draw this one and this one. And I'm going to trim them out and then do a polar array. So to start with, I'm just going to draw center lines for these things, and then I'll offset them. So I've got that one, and I'm going to offset it 1 inch to either side. So I'll offset to the right, and then I'll offset to the left. And I can remove that center line, I don't need it anymore. And then down here, you'll notice that I'm going to draw a little bit more of a framing member. It's going to come in all the way to this inner polygon. And you'll notice out here that it's going to intersect with the very edge of the outer polygon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this flat right here and click the midpoint, and I'm going to come all the way out to the edge of that octagon. Then I'll use my offset command, and I'm going to go 1 inch again to the right and to the left. Now I can delete that center line and start doing some trimming. And if we look at the drawing, I need to trim out everything that this crosses all the way down. So I'm going to use my trim command. Oops, if you mess up you can do a Control-Z, remember, or you can hit up here and do an undo. So I'm going to trim both of these out, and then I'll come up here and I'm going to trim these endpoints so that they match up correctly, and I'm going to trim those too. And after you get that trimmed, you can hit Escape. Now we're ready to do a polar array, so I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to come up here to the drop down and choose Polar Array. And I'll use my O tracking feature to find the center of all these polygons. And then I just have to input how many I need. And in this case, remember, each pair of these counts as 1. So I need a total of 8 pairs. So I'm going to come up here and put in 8 total items inside of 360 degrees. And you'll see how that matches up properly. Now I'm going to have to go back and do a little bit of trimming, but that's okay. So once I get this, I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter. And I'm going to choose my trim command and just kind of work my way around here. This will take just a couple seconds, nothing too bad, but you do want to work your way all the way around both of these octagons inside and out and trim away anything that shouldn't be there. Because remember, when you actually build this, these framing members are going to be up above these octagons, so you're not going to be able to see this area that we're trimming away. So I've got the inside all trimmed out. Now I'm going to come out here and work my way to the outside. And remember, if you mess up trimming, you can do a Control-Z on the keyboard always inside the trim command. Or if you mess up, you can also hold down the Shift key and click while you're trimming, and it will extend the lines as well. So we've got that all trimmed out, so I'll go ahead and hit Escape to end the trim command. And at that point, our top view is pretty much done except for notes, which I'm going to leave to you. I will give you some tips before we finish up. So we've got our top view all done. And to start the bottom view, or the front view actually, that's going to be underneath here, I'm just going to extend some lines down here and project these lines straight down. And the first thing I'm going to do is just build this concrete slab underneath. And I'll just put a horizontal across here, and I'm going to offset that horizontal 4 inches up because we know that that concrete slab is supposed to be 4 inches thick. Then I'll just do some trimming. So there's our concrete slab, and it matches up left to right perfectly with our top view of our roof framing plan. And the next thing I'm going to do is just extend down these lines right here for the sides of the gazebo. And then I'm also going to figure out where the peak should be for the roof, what height it should be at. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to make a couple lines up here that are at the right location, the right distance apart. And I'll do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to take these and I'm just going to move them straight down. And then I'll do some trimming on those. So now if I look at our drawing, these side 2x4s should come up to 8 feet minus 2 inches, because we're going to have 2 inches right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take those up to 8 feet, and we'll get that adjusted after we get them up there. But I'm going to offset this top of this slab up 8 feet so I know where the top of these side framing members are supposed to go. So I'm going to use my offset command, and I'm going to type in 8 feet and hit enter. And I'm just going to pick the top of the slab and take it straight up 8 feet. And now I can use my extend command and select that line. I'm just going to extend all those lines up to there. Now remember, this line is 8 feet up, so really what that is showing is this top line right here, or the bottom of the roof. So these framing members shouldn't come up that high. I need to offset this line down 2 inches and then do some trimming. So I'm going to use my offset command again, but this time I'm only going to put in 2 inches. So I'll offset straight down. And I'm going to use my trim tool. Trim off these end points on the sides. And again, we shouldn't see this line, so I'm going to trim that out. So there we've kind of got the main box drawn in, the right size, the right location. The next thing I'm going to do is find the height for the peak on the roof. So if we look, we've got 8 feet from the top of the slab plus another 4 feet. So the total is 12 feet high for the gazebo. So I'm going to come right here in the middle of the slab and I'm going to make a line straight up at 12 feet. And then after that I can just connect over to here and on the other side. Then we can delete this line, we really don't need it. So I could have done an O-track there also, but it's just as easy to delete the line. And the next thing I'm going to do is start to figure out where these framing members here go, and those are going to match up to this and this. So I'm going to take those lines and project them down. What I like to do is take just this outside one, I'm going to take it straight down and do a little bit of trimming. And then instead of projecting the other line down, I'm just going to do an offset on this of 2 inches over to the right. Then I'll take the whole thing and mirror it using the mirror tool. And I'll hit no. I want to keep my source objects. So we've got that in there, and now you can see how this is actually supposed to come up a little bit farther because we're going to have an edge there in real life. So I'm going to go ahead and put an extra line in here that comes straight up. And then I'm going to connect it up to the peak on the roof. And I'll do the same thing right here. And again, you might choose to mirror all this stuff. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Just depends what tools you like to use. And I've got that all in there. The next thing I'm going to do is put in these arches right here. And so we need to figure out what this height is for these lower pieces. So if we look at our drawing, we can see that that is 1 foot 2 inches off of the bottom of this roof framing member. So I'm going to come down 1 foot 2 inches, and then I'm going to go over 4 inches to that point, which we can see that's 4 inches from right here. They've called out a typical dimension for that. So I'm going to go back into my drawing. I'm going to use the line command, and I'm going to O-track off of this point straight down 1 foot 2 inches, and that's where I'm going to start my line at. So now I'm going to come over to the right 4 inches, and I'll hit escape. I'm going to use a new line command and O-track over to the other side, over to here. Click there to start, and I'm going to come back to the left 4 inches now. And the tricky part here is that we're going to draw this in with an arc, and we're going to use a 3-point arc when we draw it. So the next thing I'm going to do is find where the third point should be up here. And to do that, I'm just going to draw a temporary line in between these two, and then I'm going to use the center point of that temporary line to O-track up here, and I'm going to make a line down that's 4 inches long. And hit escape, and I'm going to delete that temporary line. And now I've got all 3 of those points. This one is just a construction line that I'll get rid of in a minute. But I'm going to go up here to my 3-point arc tool. And I'm just going to choose these 3 points. 1, 2, 3. And after you get that in there, you can delete this. And we know it's going to be the same on the other side, so instead of going through all that again, I'm just going to mirror this based on the center of the gazebo. And I'll hit no. I want to keep my source objects. And we can do the same thing here in the middle, but it's a little bit easier because we can use our midpoint O snap right here. So I'm going to draw a line down that's 4 inches. And a line over here that's 4 inches. And you can see me using the O track here off of the geometry that I already have. And now we can use another 3-point arc since we have all 3 of those points defined. So I'll click the arc tool. 1, 2, 3. There's our 3 points. And I can delete this now. We're done with that. So if I zoom out, we're getting really, really close now. The only thing we have left is to get this hand railing in there. And I'm just going to create one side of this again and mirror the other side over. So if we look at our dimensions again, we can see the bottom of the handrail is 4 inches off the top of the slab, and the total height of the handrail is 2.5 feet, or 2 feet 6 inches. So I'm going to lay out the top and bottom lines, and then I'll offset, and we'll come back and look at the dimensions for this and start building the slats that go in between the railing. So I'm going to offset up 4 inches off the slab, and we can go ahead and do some trimming here. We can trim out this stuff. And I'm going to trim this and then just delete the rest of the line. And I'm going to offset that line 2 feet 6 inches up to the top. And I'll do one more set of offset commands. This time I'm only going to go 2 inches. So I'll go to the underneath side of that top line, and then this bottom line I'm going to offset to the top. And now we're ready to start building those slats in there. And if we look, the first slat should be 6 inches from the outside of the gazebo, right there, and then we're going to have 8 inches in between them. And these are all 2x4 also. So I'm going to come over here, and what I'm going to do is just put in a temporary line right here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to come over 6 inches, and then straight down. And then I can go back and just delete this construction line. And then I'm going to offset this 2 inches. And you could just use the offset command here over and over. You could offset 8, then 2, 8, then 2, 8, then 2, until you get over to the end. Or you could do a rectangular array. I'm going to do a rectangular array on this to try and speed things up. So let's count how many total slats we should have. And the slats on your drawing may come out a little bit differently than what they've got in the book, and that's okay. So we've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 slats, and they should all be 8 inches from the left side of one to the left side of the other. So back in our drawing, I'm going to select this and use the rectangular array. Remember, we're going to have a total of 7 columns, only 1 row, and in between our columns we should have 8 inches. So putting that in, you can see we're pretty close to what they show in the book. So I'm going to hit close, and now I need to finish out the railing over here. And if we look back at the drawing, they've got one extra rail right here on the end that's going to come all the way down to the slab. So we'll have to add that in. And what I'm going to do is just draw a line across the top of these to start with. And I'm going to go ahead and explode this array so that I can extend this line up. And I'll draw the bottom railing also. And I'll extend this down. And at this point, I can offset this. Really, we want to move that down. I'm going to offset this 2 inches over to the right again. And now I can extend this up and kind of clean up the intersection of all these lines up here. There you can see we've got the railing in, so that's ready to mirror over to the other side now. So I'm going to select all of it with a blue window and select the end right here. And I'll use the mirror command, and I'm just going to use the middle of the slab as my mirror location. And I'll hit no. I want to keep my source objects. So there you can see we've got it all drawn in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this copy. And now just a couple notes on text and dimensions. To completely finish out this drawing, you would need to use some single line text probably to get your labels in here for your roof framing, your front elevation, and you'd probably want to add in this lumber note that they're showing down here as part of your drawing also. And then the other thing would be that you need to add some dimensions on here, which you'll have a couple of leaders up here, 4 of them, to call out the sizes for these polygons. So you'll need to use the multi-leader command in AutoCAD. And then you'll need to use your regular old dimension tools to list these dimensions on your drawings. But a couple notes on getting these dimensions in. I'm going to go to my dim style menu, so I'll go to annotate and click this drop down arrow. And I'm going to go to the modify button, and I'm going to click on primary units. Right here, yours is probably set on decimal still, and you're going to want to change that to architectural because you want to read out in feet and inches. So you can change that, and you can also change the precision. But in order to get dimensions on your drawing that are going to read out like you have in the book, you need to change that unit format to architectural. Otherwise, everything's going to still be reading out in decimal inches like we've been doing for most of the semester. So you need to change that to architectural. And you're also going to need to change your text to something much larger. I would recommend starting out with 4 inches. You're also going to need to upsize your arrows, and I would probably set those on 4 inches as well. And you can get a preview here in this preview window of what your dimensions are going to look like. So a lot of this stuff in these dimension settings you're going to have to upsize. And for instance, the break size right here, that's going to be much too small also. You might try 2 inches on that, or maybe a little bit bigger, 4 inches maybe. And you're going to have to try this stuff and see how it looks. And if it's not right, you can come back in here and adjust it always. But all this stuff you're going to want to upsize. And these are just guesses I'm making here, so you may want to try on your own and see what's going to work right. I'm just kind of taking a shot in the dark here. So once you get that all set, you can hit OK and hit close and come up to your dimension tool, and you'll see that these dimensions are going to read out in feet now. So that looks pretty close really, so if you wanted to steal my settings, that might be alright. I need a little bit more of a gap in here between my dimension lines, so you would want to increase that number so you have a better gap right here. That's awfully close. But other than that, it looks pretty close, looks pretty good. So you would go through and dimension everything then using your dimension tools so that it matches exactly with what you see here. So that's a slow, tedious process, but not really that hard, so I'm not going to include that as part of this video because I think that's pretty self-explanatory. And you should be able to figure it out on your own after a couple of tips on the dim styles menu. So make sure you set up your dim styles, and once you get those set up so that they look nice, the rest of it's not too hard. It's just pointing and clicking at the correct points. So that's it for this. Good luck on your own, and you should be able to get it now after all the stuff we've talked about. So give it a shot, and we'll see you next time.